The old idea that a woman can only serve her nation through her home is gone. Now is the time, and on you the responsibility rests. It may be as a leader, it may be as a humble follower, it might be in a political party, or perhaps in a party of your own. But it is there. So many of you, the young women of Ireland, are distinguishing yourselves every day and coming more and more to the front. And we look at you with great hopes and great confidence that through your emancipation you are bringing fresh ideas, fresh energy. Lately, things seem to be changing. Women, from having till very recently stood so far removed from all politics, should be able to formulate a much clearer and more incisive view of the political situation than men. Now here is a chance for our women. You will go out into the world and get elected onto as many public bodies as possible. Those words are not mine. They are in fact the words of Countess Markievicz, and they were delivered in 1915 to the Irish Women's Franchise League. And I think those words could have been uttered yesterday, in fact, many of them. Countess Markievicz, as most of you will know, was Minister for Labour in the First Dáil, 1919 to 1922. She was the first female cabinet minister in Ireland and the second only in Europe. She was a trailblazer, as was Ireland at the time, with our 1916 proclamation guaranteeing universal suffrage and equal rights and equal opportunities for all of our citizens. In 1979, 60 years later, Moira Geoghegan Quinn was appointed as Ireland's second ever female cabinet minister. Since then, Ireland has had another 10 women, just about enough to fill this front row, appointed to cabinet. Our Dáil, the very heart of our political representation, has at the moment 25 women elected out of 166. One of them spoke to us this morning, Catherine Murphy TD. That's 15%. And it's the highest number of women that we have ever had elected in our state. So we have always been governed by 85% men. In fact, only 92 women have ever been elected to Dáil Éireann. And the situation is not much better at local level, and we've talked a lot about local level both yesterday evening and today. Just 16% of our local government representatives, that's those people at town, borough and county council level, are women. And these figures show how, when the big and important decisions are made, women are absent. We talked about the EMC last night. Joan Burton highlighted it yesterday in the news. 4 men in a room making the decisions that decide all of our fate. It's not right. Is this the republic that we imagined? Is it the republic that any of us want, or is it the republic that we deserve? I believe it's not, and I know that I'm not alone. 4 years ago, my partner and I, Michelle O'Donnell Keating, set up Women for Europe, which was a grassroots campaign around the Second Lisbon Treaty referendum to provide a platform for women's voices. Within months, we grew from just the two of us to 30 volunteers, travelling all over Ireland, trained in the nuts and bolts of the treaty, and talking to women's groups, meeting them in all kinds of places, in GAA clubs, community halls, sometimes in living rooms, gatherings of the Country Women's Association, sometimes talking to groups as small as 3, sometimes 300. But no matter where we went, the conversation was always the same. And it wasn't about Europe, actually. They always said, we're here, we've come out tonight to talk about politics, this matters to us, and yet none of us are in it. None of us are elected representatives, none of us are putting ourselves forward. So Michelle and I pushed this a little bit and asked why not? And generally the answer was, well, how would we get involved? Where would we start? What would people make of us locally? We haven't been involved before. Politics, it's not really for me. I prefer to be running things in the community the way I always have. Anyway, my experience wouldn't fit in politics. I'm not qualified for it. I'm not trained. And yet, these women were the very women that Catherine spoke about this morning and others, the backbone of local communities, the women behind community games, residents' associations, farmers' markets, tidy towns committees, the women that are representatives at trade union level in Chamber of Commerce. All of them was playing a really important role in their community. And I would say many of them were leaders. All of them were making a difference. They all had something to contribute to politics. And yet they didn't see that. They didn't see, in so many cases, the translation of what it was that they were doing in their day-to-day life and their activism at community level to political life. And I think that is at the heart of this problem. Michelle and I wanted to change that. And that is where Women for Election came from. Women for Election is a non-partisan, not-for-profit organisation that is set up to inspire and equip women to succeed in politics by providing training, mentoring and support programmes. And we set it up because of the demand from the thousands of women that we met all over Ireland for some kind of a bridge from interest in politics to action. And I should say too that it's not just about, and we had this conversation last night in a certainly lively environment, what are the different roles that people can play in politics, and is it important that each one of us puts our name on the ballot paper? It's not. Since we set up Women for Election, we have had 350 women through our Inspire and Equip programmes. And of those 350 women, 70 of them have committed to run in the local elections next year. A number of others are thinking about it. But the other 280 have committed to do something, to play some role, to canvass, to get out their writing skills and contribute in that kind of way, to be a campaign manager. Whatever it might be, there are all kinds of different roles, and I think that's also really important to the discussion. Since we set up, we've been all over Ireland, Dublin, Cork, Galway, Limerick, Athlone, with a travelling circus of trainers, facilitators, political speakers. And each step of the way, we've been inspired by the women that we have met. In Limerick, we met Ciara. And Ciara is a young woman, a community activist, who works in a factory at night. And during the day, works part-time in a constituency office, and the rest of the time runs a youth engagement and education programme. Every single hour of Ciara's day is contributing to some kind of community service. Why? Because she's living right there on the border of Limerick and Kerry, and she is seeing every other person her age leave or emigrate. And she wants to do something about it. She believes so passionately in her community, and she wants to contribute to some kind of change. And her way of doing that is by running these community programmes and education programmes to try to support people like her to be able to stay, to work, and hopefully to prosper at home. In Galway, we met Helen. And when we first met Helen, we couldn't understand why she came on our programme, because she told us quite openly that she hated politics. And the reason she hated politics is probably quite different to why any of us might say we hate politics. Helen hated politics because politics took her husband from her. Helen was living in Nigeria, and her husband was a politician, and she wanted him to move to Ireland. He said no. He believed that the only way he could contribute to improving his country, making some kind of positive impact, was in his role as a politician in Nigeria. And he was assassinated. Helen moved to Ireland, and she's now very active in Galway in all sorts of community groups. But she has realised now that her husband was right. That the way that she can have influence and the way that she can drive change and find a voice for her community, which is not just Nigerian, but the immigrant community in Galway in general. She represents people from Russian, Polish, Lithuanian and Romanian backgrounds as well, and talks very passionately about their issues. She believes that it's through politics that they will find their voice and their influence, and she wants to be their representative. In Dublin, we met Samantha. And Samantha has been a long-time campaigner for the Magdalene women because of her mother's experience in the laundry. Samantha spent years steadily and patiently fighting for justice for this cause. And I would say as she was doing that, she learned how the system worked. She watched politics and she saw how it operated. And she realised that she could do that. She could do it really well, and she could have such a positive impact. In Dublin too, we met Madge. And Madge was coming up to her 70th birthday on our programme. And at the end of the day, she told us that she had always wanted to contest an election. She was 30 years a member of a political party, working in the back rooms, out on the doorsteps, but she never had the courage to say it, to put up her hand and say, yeah, I want to be the one, I want to be on the ballot paper. Madge is planning to contest 2014. And we met Lisa. Lisa got on the ticket to contest the last general election in Mayo, just 6 weeks out from polling day, 26 years of age. She fought an impressive campaign against big political beasts, including our now Taoiseach. And she lost, but she has developed some resilience that she's building on, because she's a member in her spare time of the Defence Forces. Ciara, Helen, Samantha, Lisa and Madge all intend to contest the 2014 local elections, as do so many more women who have become part of Women for Election. And it's those women up and down Ireland, aged from 18 to almost 80, who I know, having met them, will make exceptional public representatives. Some of them are from political parties, but many, many more are not. They're the local leaders that we talked about before, the kind of people that just get things done in communities, the kind of people that we go to, that we look to as leaders, and yet so often when they're women, they're not political leaders. So why? Why have these 350 women come on our programme? Why have they always had this niggling interest in politics, always kind of wanted to think about what might they do next, but never done it? And the barriers that women face to entering politics are well researched, well rehearsed, and well summarised as the 5 C's: cash, culture, childcare, candidate selection and confidence. But what we have found, after nearly 2 years up and down the country, every single day encouraging women to think about this as an option, is there's another common factor, which is qualification. And the women we meet want to know, are they qualified to put themselves forward for politics? They want to know, do they have the skills and experience that they need to be a public representative? But that is impossible, because there is no job description and no person specification for a councillor, for a TD or for a local area rep. There's no common model and no clear route to get there. And the process of moving from interest to action in political life is often deeply shrouded in mystery and quite daunting for somebody who hasn't been part of it before. And I suppose that, in essence, is what Women for Election is about. It's about demystifying that process. It's about drawing back the curtain on how people get involved in politics, and informing, equipping and inspiring any woman that wants to play a role in our political life. That's what our programmes do. They provide training in the core areas of competency for anybody looking to participate in a political campaign. Working with us, women learn exactly how many votes they need to get elected and where to get those votes. They learn who they need on their campaign team, when they need them, and how to manage them. They learn how the media works, how to develop their message for media, and the do's and don'ts of political interviews. And most importantly, they become part of a cross-party network of women supportive of them, which I would say is fast becoming a national movement. And there's just one other thing to mention that's a little bit different about women and men. It's being asked. I went to a conference a couple of years ago in Dublin about women's political engagement. 5 elected reps sat on the panel, and each was asked, how did you get into politics? And each answered, such and such asked me, somebody asked me, somebody told me I'd be good. This isn't true for men. Men are more inclined to put themselves forward. We heard a really interesting story recently from the States of a piece of academic research that's going on looking at people who could potentially be politicians. What are the triggers? And it was a woman who had filled out the survey and was taking a comment from the researcher. And this woman, a great experience as an administrator, she'd worked in the mayor's office, and the researcher said, have you ever been asked to go forward? You had this fantastic experience. And she said, no, I haven't. I've been a backroom person. And the researcher pushed her a little more and said, really, there hasn't been an opportunity or chance where someone said to you, you should really do it. And she said, now that you mention it, actually, there was a time I was doing some work for the mayor, and he said, God, you should really consider politics. That's a fantastic piece of work. But I never really thought of it like that. Fast forward, she rings a man who's filled in the same survey, and she says, oh, so you've been recruited to politics, you've been approached, tell me a little bit more. And he said, I'd love to tell you, it was actually just last week. I was on a transatlantic flight, I was in Heathrow Airport, and the CNN was on the radio, and I was commentating, I was really angry, I was telling the TV what I thought, and the guy at the bar beside me said, you know what you're talking about, you should be in politics. This is the difference. Lately, things seem to be changing. Countess Markievicz' words in 1915. She may have been right, but they didn't change for long. And yet those words resonate now. The next general election will see all parties bound by the quota legislation, which requires them to field 30% female candidates at the next general election. This has pushed the parties to act. All are declaring that they're open for business and actively seeking female candidates. We are less than a year from the local and European elections and 2 years from a general election. We have a tremendous opportunity. We have a chance to support women, to get them on the ticket and get them elected. We have a chance to change the age-old makeup of our politics and bring new and diverse voices around the table where decisions are made. And by doing that, we'll improve things for all of us, because the part that is so often missed in this discussion is the impact, the difference that having more women elected makes. Evidence shows that women conduct politics in a more open and transparent way than their male counterparts. They're consultative in decision-making, more likely to work across party lines. They create new avenues to power by opening up new coalitions of influence. I have to finish now. And the voices in those avenues bring new voices, I suppose, into politics. Countess Markievicz may have believed that women should be able to articulate or formulate a much clearer and more incisive political view of the political situation than men. I am not so sure. But what I do know is that women provide a different perspective. And this is not about better or worse. It is not about men versus women. It's about maximising the talents of our citizens to ensure the best possible leadership, political leadership for all of us. So just to wrap up with Countess Markiewicz's quote, now is the time. On you the responsibility rests. It may be as a leader, a humble follower, perhaps in a political party, perhaps in a party of your own, but it is now. And with that, I'll close.